Go for it.
Hello, welcome to Revolutionary Speaking. My name is Rashad Barber, and today I get to work with a panel of very young, active people here in Madison. First, I have Leland Pand, who is the Dane County Board Supervisor for District 5. He was actually endorsed by the Green Party and a local third party, the Progressive Dane, who actually, from what I've heard, is one of the youngest supervisors, not only in this county, but in the country. Next, I have C.J. Terrell, who's a Madison native, became active in the community during the Capitol occupation, and after leaving the building, he helped form the Autonomous Solidarity, which organizes events around such as the People's Brat Fest. We also have Harriet Rowan, who is a UW Madison grad, founder of the information station and during the Capitol occupation. And last but not least, we have Arthur Cole Riggs, who is also a Madison native. After participating in the occupation, he started a Facebook page called Shit Scott Walker is Doing to My State. And he most recently ran for governor in the Republican primary. So, welcome to the show, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
So just to get right off, just to start off, I'm interested to know, how did all you guys meet each other?
Boy, that's I met Arthur through my brother in the Capitol. I met Hattie at the information station and then at a bunch of meetings. And then I don't think I met Leland until... When did I meet you, Leland?
I have no recollection.
I don't know.
He
just seeped into my daily
exactly.
life. Slowly.
But it was, all based in or around the Capitol occupation.
Yeah.
Either the actions from the occupation or right after what happened.
Yeah, I think the only person here who I knew beforehand was Harriet from some campus political thing, shindigs, and some local elections beforehand. So.
Great. Yeah, and so I met this whole group. I met all you guys at Fighting Bob Fest a couple of weekends ago. And I think you guys were speaking about the Uprising and the Capitol occupation. I was so caught by how young all of you are, as I'm relatively, I think, young as well. Just being active, and not only active, but very articulate with your ideas. I'm interested to know a little bit more about the Uprising and your time there. Are there any moments that stick out for all four of you guys, or even just individually, that some things that you'd like to, yeah.
Well, I guess for me, how I got to the Capitol is one of the more important memories for me from the occupation. I had heard from a couple friends and coworkers that there was this bill coming, and that there were some protests at the governor's office, and I saw some pictures from that, and it was cool. And then a customer at the coffee shop I worked at told me that there was this public hearing going on about this new super shitty bill, and I was watching it on Wisconsin Eye pretty late on the 14th until like 11 or 12 at night, when Robin Vost, one of the co-chairs of the committee, said that he was going to cut off the speakers list and stop the public testimony before the speakers list had been exhausted. And I think that's when some calls were made to students to come down to the Capitol. I was just watching the Wisconsin Eye live feed, and I thought it wasn't right to cut off the public testimony before people were done. So I showed up that Tuesday, and I ended up staying up, I think close to 3 weeks at the Capitol, leaving temporarily for sunlight things. But.
And how about you guys? Any lessons learned during this occupation?
Yeah. We definitely learned a lesson in last-second community efforts. A lot of what happened in the Capitol occupation was, rules were changing periodically throughout the day, and the way we were expected to behave was changing very rapidly, and none of us knew each other, and so we definitely did a lot of impromptu organizing to try to make sure people got messages and knew what was going on, and to try to keep the situation as calm as possible, even though it was extremely hectic for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that's very interesting for you to share that. I was active in Occupy Wall Street in New York, and knowing how working with such a large group of people where many people are not familiar with each other, it's one, I thought it was so interesting to have that space provided where community can kind of like engage in not only discourse and just community activity, but that there's some potential to organize and yeah, kind of organize around what issues that might be interest or what might be common understandings or common themes to move on. Maybe you can go a little bit further. What were some of these roles, or like what was some of these incidents that you saw community coming together at the Capitol?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the whole occupation was a representation of that happening, which was people who didn't know each other. Most people, I think, came into the Capitol, with a few people that they knew, and left with, hundreds of new friends. And I think that, what we all had in common was trying to stop this bill. And so it was easy to organize around that because there was one very clear kind of goal that everyone shared. And so, the hard work of finding out what a community finds important was kind of obvious right there. And so people, just kind of had to get along. What was really amazing was not only were people organizing together and, doing actions and speaking and testifying and all of that stuff, but we were actually living together. So we were eating together and sleeping together and, like it was living in a huge house with a whole bunch of people, which was really hard, but also really amazing because people kind of, took the high road, were very sharing, people were very kind, people were super friendly, and it was just really inspiring to see that. I think anyone who came into the Capitol during that time felt it, whether or not that they were there, just as a kind of tourist to see all these people who were protesting in the Capitol or who were there to protest. I think anyone who walked into the Capitol felt immediately embraced by the community that was developed in there. We actually started calling it towards the end Capital City, and it was like our own little community that had been developed. And I always, I still refer to it as Capital City. It was a very special moment in time.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think one of the things that drives me about being active is the whole cultural aspect of it. And I think a lot of the changes that we need in the world right now is on that cultural front. Like, it's more than just the legislative and like enacting different policies, but it's really like how do we interact and trying to find that collective again in a very automized, individualized society, which is very competitive. Right now we need nothing else but like cooperation and sustainability if we're going to sustain each other and ourselves. So that is very I'm very grateful that you did bring that up, and so I'm interested what maybe Leland, since you're so, I mean, we're all relatively young, but what drives you to be so active at a young age, but just in general? And maybe this is something we can even go around. What is it that drives you to be active?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been, political, or at least politically aware since I was young, and I remember when I was actually 16 in the 2008 presidential election. Yeah, I couldn't vote yet. But I remember paying attention and thinking, and just really, I was like, well, if we're going to treat this election seriously, like, then I'm going to look through at all these candidates' views in the primaries and see which one matches mine. And for me, like, when I was like 16, like, two of the biggest issues to me, like, that sort of got me started in politics were like gay rights and the environment. So like for me, I couldn't even fathom why we wouldn't let anything less than gay marriage happen. And so, for instance, I immediately just knocked out every single candidate who didn't say they would support gay marriage, which knocked out every top-tier candidate, and pretty much everyone in the Republican primary. And so, like, I was left with, in the Democratic primary, Mike Gravel and Dennis Kucinich, and I was going, well, they actually say things that I agree with. Why wouldn't I support them? Why are they such a ostracized viewpoint? And so that really just got me started in politics and sort of the way the system is structured. And I think when we're talking about changing the sort of climate and how our politics is not just the legislative process, I think that's absolutely right, because one of the things, I think one of the lessons I learned out of the Capitol was that real change doesn't come from electing certain people and then hoping that they push things through, right? Real change comes from bottom up. For instance, the recall election, Tom Barrett didn't challenge really any sort of ideas. He ran a very, poor campaign against Walker. He did very little messaging. He essentially said, well, Walker has a criminal defense fund. He didn't even talk about the union issue. And so he didn't push any views. He didn't win any sort of swing voters. He didn't move the political spectrum. But the Capitol protest, this was, 100-some thousand people coming out. That actually moved the political spectrum. It made people remember that about labor issues. It made people more sympathetic towards union issues. You actually heard stories of, well, I used to be Republican and now I'm not, or I used to be an independent and now I'm like totally pro-labor, things like that. Or I'm, used to be an AFSCME member but I hated my union and now, I'm just here for the union. You hear things like that. And I think that's especially true of my generation because you had a lot of students who this was their first political event. And a lot of UW students, you had a lot of high school students. I was one of my favorite moments when I saw my high school walk out and come out there. And not all of them knew all of the issues yet, but through this Capitol event, they started to see these issues and see issues and perspectives that they don't see in, say, our mainstream media or our elected process. So, yeah.
I started out very early on in my life. I've always been vocal about what I perceive to be injustice, whether that's something my parents used to tell me when I was little I couldn't do, or something a teacher said to me or another student. I was always the kid that would yell at a teacher for calling on the kid without their hand raised, anything that bothered me, I was definitely saying something about it. But when I came out to first just witness and then testify against the bill, and then that turned into the Capitol occupation, what kept me active was just the feeling of the social contract that was created in that building. It was a large group of people that all decided at the same time, we just by being there, by being in that space, you signed a contract with all the people around you that you were going to respect that space and that you were going to try, your best to keep that space a positive and upbeat environment. And that feeling of just everybody being positive and out there for each other, the feeling that we could really change the world. There weren't rules. We were there breaking the rules on purpose because the system of rules was not doing us justice, right? And our biggest rule was there aren't rules, so keep in mind that there aren't any rules, so don't go crazy or anything. Be a reasonable person, be kind, be generous with things you have, and make sure you keep information flowing. Everybody was just very very out there for everyone else, and that feeling that I felt, that feeling that we can overcome anything if we just band together and try hard enough and bring in the community. Every time I feel just completely defeated by the world, I think back to being in the Capitol building, and it just reignites my spark to come out and change the planet. And I think unfortunately not everybody could be in that building at the same time, but I wish everybody could have that to look back on, because it really, it makes it easy for me to continue, every time I think it sucks.
Sure. And I'll just add in real quick that I find the activist community to be the most thriving and even just living people, very conscious, generally the people that take at least for me, my understanding of being an activist, I do it because I'm a freedom fighter. I'm for liberation. I like to be outspoken. I want to see the best in myself, which I can't see without seeing the best in everybody else and the world. And to be around that, that connecting, interconnectedness with everyone else that have those have similar ideas, it's very inspiring. So I think there is something to say about that social network of people. And what drives you, Harriet?
Well, I guess growing up, my parents were very active in the Green Party in D.C. and for D.C. statehood and other issues. And so, every weekend growing up, I was stuffing envelopes or knocking doors or handing out pamphlets. And, then in high school, there was, when the war in Iraq started, there was some walkouts at my high school, and there was a little bit of activism going on at my high school around that. And then when I was looking into college, UW-Madison, my mom had went here in the 60s, and so it had this huge pull for me as this place where people were very active and socially conscious. And so I came here for that reason, and then was a little bit disappointed, and didn't have, it was really hard to like kind of get plugged into the right place, which is why I appreciate the Capitol so much, because it was my senior year, and for 4 years I had been kind of trying to find these people, these like-minded people on campus, and it's really hard, or it was for me at least. I probably didn't do it the right way. And when the Capitol occupation started, I went, and I just felt compelled to be there. I was there for about 2 days, just kind of sitting there, and just talking to people and figuring out what was going on. I didn't know much about local Wisconsin politics, so I was learning a lot. I'd actually never stepped foot in the Capitol before the day that I went for the occupation, to spend the night. And so, but then I had this idea to start this kind of hub of information. I called it the information station, where people came and shared, things that they knew, when meetings were happening, where the food was, blah, 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 stuff like that. And so I started this information station and kind of got really involved at that point, and was there, 24/7 for 17 days, 18 days. But what I find, like, to me, it's really personal. Like, obviously it's nice to feel like you're doing something good in the world, but it's also just, I've met my favorite people in the world through activism. I've, gotten to have all these amazing experiences and meet all these, it's just, personally, it's very gratifying. I've met wonderful people, had awesome experiences, and just my life is better because of it. So there's those selfish reasons too.
I don't know when I really would consider myself getting active. I was pretty involved in like high school governance, but I wouldn't put that on any sort of comparable platter. It's a different, I guess, institution that you're working with. And then in college, I was involved in some student groups. We organized some trips down to the School of the Americas protest in Georgia, where there's essentially a South American like militant training program that our Army facilitates, and every year there's a group of Jesuit priests who put on this it's School of the Americas Watch protest, where they're just saying, we're still here, we're still watching what you're doing, we still don't agree with your practices. So I organized that for 2 years in a row. Then I left college, and I kind of got disengaged. But I think in environmental activism and issues, for me, served as a kind of a springboard into this bigger realm of political action. And I think environmental issues serve that purpose for a lot of younger people, because it is an issue that is very imminent and very severe and serious, and that people, I think in our generation more so than in older generations, know that if we don't take serious action very soon, it's going to have consequences on my life and the lives of my children and my grandchildren. So I got first like heavily involved in this organizing concept and activism, action in the world of environmental activism. And I think it's a very obvious realm for a lot of younger people who see that our world's not going to feel the same in a generation, and if we don't tell our leaders and become the leaders that change that, then we're the ones that are going to pay the price for it.
Sure. So I know we're running short in time, so I want to ask a couple questions and see what you guys think or get some ideas. What maybe, I don't know if you guys want to choose, what's one of the really hot topics on your radar right now for local activism, or what's going on in Wisconsin? Anybody?
Yeah, I think right now one of the big issues in Dane County, at least, is homelessness. For instance, a lot of homeless people over the winter spend time either in the Capitol basement or in the main Madison Library, and both of those are closed for renovation. And as anyone knows, Madison winters are not something to be trifled with, and especially, you want to have a roof over your head during the winter. So really pushing for finding a sort of emergency measure this winter for homeless folks, And then really down the road, one of the ideas proposed that I'm, really pushing and wholly supportive of is a sort of permanent day center, because right now there aren't any shelters for homeless people during the day. And there are a lot of homeless people that work third shift. There are a lot of homeless people that need places to store their things, because most homeless people around Madison and probably in the U.S. actually do work. And so they have jobs that and job interviews. And it's very hard to get a good job interview when you have all of your stuff with you, right? So that's one of the big issues right now, because the issue is so pressing and that there are lives on the line. But I think, for instance, the labor issue is still ongoing. The judge of the Dane County Circuit judge just overturned parts of Act 10. I expect an appeal, and I expect the Wisconsin Supreme Court to do something a little different, but given its political makeup. But one of the things we've done is we've taken advantage of this moment to actually extend the contracts for the unions at the county, and I believe the city and the Madison School Board have done the same thing. So that ensures that the contracts extend. The county contracts, for instance, will extend until 2015. So at least the unions will continue to exist as they have for a few years, and hopefully by then we will have overturned Act 10, and we will continue to bargain with the unions.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Let's all get there. So I think closing up, I always like to ask this questions, and since we have 4 of you guys, maybe you guys can all decide how you want to go about this. But the name of the show is Revolutionary Speaking, and it means something different. Generally, I found to almost everyone, it means something obviously personal to me. But can you guys give me an idea, or like what your thoughts on this term? Two words, revolutionary speaking. How do you describe this?
I think it's speaking from a new level of social consciousness. We have for very long in society put off a few key issues, and we've allowed ourselves to fight over things that are just really not that important. And I think a lot of what you're seeing with the unrest all over the globe is people speaking from just a different level of consciousness. Like, we can sit here and debate abortion all day, but nothing's ever changed on that. And like the reality of the situation is, like, if we don't do something about the environment and about like jobs and about education now, like, we're about to lose institutions. Like, the public education as we know it is almost out the window, and we are running out of time to fix public education before it's just gone. You can't defund something the way we have over the course of my entire lifetime. I think it's a lot of people showing, or I think it's a concept of saying what you mean when it comes to that. It's time to tell our government that we can't play political games with people's futures. It's time to speak up, and I'm pro-revolutionary speaking.
I feel like revolutionary speaking, to me, encompasses this concept of the populace dictating the conversation, whereas before, we relied on the media and the newspapers and the TV stations to tell us what we were angry about or what we cared about, and now there's this movement all around the world of people taking it upon themselves to decide what they care about and what issues they want to talk about, and controlling the dialogue, so that the people's interests are discussed, and hopefully we can, with technology and greater access to information, people, this will just continue to grow, and our institutions will be more representative of the revolutionary thoughts that they're supposed to, subscribe to and promote.
Sure.
I guess when you said that, I thought about the Capitol, of course, I always do, and about how people spoke in the center of the rotunda. I never did, and I actually was telling them before, I never testified, which was kind of weird because that was like why we were there for the first 5 days. I think it was just, anxiety that I had within myself not to be able to do it. But what was really amazing, and I think what really inspired people and kept people going, was this practice of listening to people speak, and like to speak from their heart and to really say what they were feeling, and not trying to spin it, not trying to get you to vote for them, not trying to get you to buy something. It was just people were just speaking how they felt. And I think that was really, I mean, it seems sad to call that revolutionary, but I think in our culture it kind of was,
Sure.
because generally we listen to people who are paid to be on TV, or commercials and all this stuff, and we almost never get to hear our own community members talk about how they feel. And so I think that was really revolutionary, and I think that that's something to keep in mind. Was it seems so little and it seems so insignificant, but actually just giving people that platform, and it's kind of translated in the Occupy movement to like the People's Mic, or all of these things where people, it's incredibly empowering to speak to your community and have people hear your opinions and take them seriously, because we get that so little.
Certainly.
Yeah, definitely. I echo all of their points. I think to really exemplify Harriet's point, I think allowing people the platform to speak and really empowering them to empower themselves is revolutionary. There are a lot of homeless folks that have gotten very political locally, and getting people involved in local politics is difficult. Getting homeless people involved in politics is difficult. So getting homeless people involved in local politics is fantastic, and they do feel empowered, and they do feel like they not only need to make some change, but that they are able to make some change, which is great. And I think that also speaks to the fact that, that sort of speaking, that sort of honest, heart-to-heart, like in the community speaking, is revolutionary, because any sort of change that is going to result is going to be bottom-up. It's not going to result in our current political climate, from our current political system. It's going to result from people from the bottom up feeling empowered and feeling like they can make the change that they want. And so whether that's a labor union, whether that's a local community, I think that sort of local bottom-up sort of speaking is revolutionary.
Sure, certainly. Yeah, and I agree. That's one of the reasons why I did this show, to get back into, put people's media like back on top. I think we've had a live press years, like long time ago, where now it's being controlled so much, but any opportunity that we have as people to voice our opinions and share stories and participate in a national dialogue, that is so critical to having us represented. So thank you all for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Sure, certainly. Viva la revolution. Thanks.
De queso.
Cool.
All right, I have to run.
Sweet.
Take care, man.